Good evening to you both, and let's get started on the resumption today of teacher contract talks. ATA members voted overwhelmingly in favor of a strike back in June, and with the start of the new school year rapidly approaching, the Premier weighed in Monday, claiming the province spends enough on education and questions how funds are being managed.
We've left it to this point to the school boards, but we're on the brink of a strike. And a lot of the issues at the heart of that is the management of the classroom, which we've delegated to school boards. So if we have to be a bit more hands-on, then we'll take a closer look at it.
Yeah, the president of the Teachers Association disagrees with the Premier's comments, saying public education in our province is chronically underfunded and now in crisis. If no deal is reached, teachers have until October 7th to hit the picket lines and must give 72 hours strike notice. The group representing the province at the bargaining table plans to vote Friday on a possible lockout. Kathy, start with you. What is to be made of the difference in positioning over what's at the heart of these contract talks?
Basically what's at the heart is money. The Premier is making it very clear that the overall envelope is probably not going to change and that she wants to get very hands-on with the school boards. She's diverting attention to the school board management rather than the overall envelope. Mr. Schilling is looking at the overall envelope and saying it's been inadequate for a number of years. We are the lowest province in terms of per student funding, and so he wants the basic volume of money to start flowing.
Sarah, what's your takeaway from the Premier weighing in at this point, and what impact do you see her stance having on the state of these contract talks?
The Premier's number one job, if a strike actually happens, is going to be managing this from the perspective of the provincial government. So I'm not surprised that she's weighing in and that people are asking her questions about it. I think that's only going to increase. I think that her response is really interesting. I speaking with a lot of people, a lot of parents, a lot of teachers, it's pretty consistent what I hear, which is that the system is underfunded. And any class that has, 30 plus students in it, some with more complex learning needs, we're a very wealthy province. We don't have a provincial sales tax. We spend money on a lot of things. For people and politicians to talk about the most important thing being, the legacy that we leave our children, and the future being our children, I'd like to see them put their money where their mouth is and increase the per funding student. I'm not talking about giving more money to teachers, but I think, because I actually think that would be a good position for the teachers to take, say, we're not asking for a raise, but we want to see more money invested in students.
Kathy, a lot of the focus here is on teachers and on the province. You brought up school boards. So where do you feel school boards are left in this equation?
Well, that's a very good question, and it's an especially important question because municipal elections are coming up, and people are starting to position themselves here on what the future role of school boards is going to be, who's going to be in control of school boards. So yeah, the public school boards particularly, I think that the Premier is signaling that she wants to get more involved in the day-to-day, much in the way that the provincial government has stepped in on a few municipal issues, like, of all things, bike lanes. But I think she's wanting to have a little bit more control at that local level and in those local races. So I think it's very important for the school boards what happens in these negotiations and how it's going to affect the municipal elections coming up.
Sarah, you pointed out this being a stressful time for parents, given uncertainty over what is going to evolve here. But who do you see the impact of that stress weighing on more when it comes to the need to get a deal done? Is it the teachers, school boards, or the Smith government?
I honestly think it's the heaviest burden will fall on parents in terms of having to manage. And this is a really good point. If you have kids in school and they are not of the age where they can be left at home, you need to find childcare arrangements immediately. And by immediately, I mean like right now, in the eventuality that this does happen, because worst case scenario, you've made a plan and you don't need to follow through on it. The province and the teachers, I think, are both ready to play hardball. Parents and families in Alberta need to be ready to manage the consequences of this fight.
Kathy, what's your read on the likelihood of a lockout with the Teachers Employer Bargaining Association voting in that regard on Friday?
Well, that's a good question. It would give the schools some certainty about what's happening and parents some certainty about what's happening, because the teachers actually have until early October to pull a trigger on a strike should talks break down now. So this is just certainty of timing. It's interesting that Jason Schilling has said that he's not surprised that they want to go this route. So this is relatively common in terms of when you get to these sort of final end stages on school negotiations, where the employer says we want to set the time.
And Sarah, how likely is a contract resolution here to smooth out the road forward for public education in Alberta?
I think a deal would be great, not only for teachers, but for the government, and also most especially for students and families who are in the system. I think a deal would be great, but it's going to take both parties coming to the table and looking for a solution. Anyone can understand if you have two people that are miles apart in terms of what they want and how they see things, then it's really hard to get a deal. But I think what parents and families expect is that both sides come to the table. They do their honest best to get a deal that not only works for them, but for the kids in the classrooms, and that there's some kind of certainty, because we know how important education is. Kids are, as everyone likes to say, the future. Let's make sure that they're in their classrooms, they're getting the best education that they can, and that the teachers and government can find a way out of this.
As we heard off the top this evening, the Smith government has struck a panel of experts and initiated an online survey to engage Albertans on the possible build-out of nuclear energy in our province. Sarah, the Alberta Next panel, back in the spotlight this week as well, meeting in Fort McMurray this evening before moving to Lloydminster. Is now the time to be triggering a panel and consultations on nuclear energy?
The government of Alberta has a lot of balls in the air, and they are only adding another one to the mix with this new consultation. I have to say that I'm actually really happy that they're doing this, because energy is so critical. And to the Premier's point, the use of AI data centers, the amount of energy and natural resources that they use, and with the way that people are using AI now, from the smallest search to the biggest project, this is really critical. And I actually see this as a great way to continue to position Alberta as the home and center of energy in Canada. We're already the home of oil and gas. It makes sense, I think, that we're also the home of other forms of energy, including renewables as well as nuclear. And so I'm excited to hear for this. It's going to take a year, and as the government has said, it could be possibly a decade before we see anything up and running. So, the time to do this maybe wasn't today. It might have actually been 10 years ago, but we're here now, and it's happening.
Okay, so Kathy, how do you see this push for nuclear playing, given contention and current dynamics around the Smith government's handling of the renewable energy sector?
Well, that's a really good question, because I think there's two ways, and it depends on how cynical you are. Essentially, some people suspect that this diversion of interest to nuclear is a way of just kicking the can down the road, essentially saying, well, we're going to need oil and gas for sure for the next 10 years, and then we'll have nuclear energy to take over. We won't ever need a serious rollout of renewables, and which is really the biggest competition right now to oil and gas in terms of available technology. So I think that if you're very cynical, that's where you see this. If you're not so cynical, you would say, as Jason Wong did, that essentially nuclear is part of a healthy mix of energy sources. And so it would be interesting if, as we see that panel roll out, if they approach it from that perspective as well and ask people what they think about what percentage nuclear could be in terms of the mix and whether it takes the place of natural gas-fired power plants.
Sarah, there's an interesting political dynamic here as well. Former cabinet minister from the days of Rachel Notley's NDP government has been appointed to this panel of experts. What does the inclusion of Darren Billis suggest about the Smith government's approach here?
Well, I think we can also see it in the formation of the Alberta Next panel in terms of, the inclusion of Trevor Tombe and some other very well-respected Albertans. I love this. This is what I expect from government. I expect them to bring people from all political angles, from across the political spectrum, the best and the brightest, in order to have these conversations, because Albertans can have confidence that not only are the best decisions being made, but given the best analysis. And so I'm happy to see his inclusion. And that's exactly what I think we need more of in Alberta, not less.
All right, we have time for one more topic, and that is getting a read on the use of write-in ballots in last week's Battle River Crowfoot by-election. Pierre Poilievre, of course, handily won the Alberta riding with 80% of the vote, securing his ticket back to Parliament. And it was a vote with a twist. With more than 200 candidates, Elections Canada made the switch to write-in ballots. And according to validated results that were posted over the weekend, 211 ballots were rejected. That's down from 391 in the same riding in April. So Kathy, voters had to write out the first and last name of their candidate of choice. Surprised there weren't more rejected ballots?
Well, I think that the fact that they signaled right off the top that you don't have to be a great speller certainly helped, so that as long as it was pretty obvious who you were trying to vote for, it would be counted. So I think allowing that bit of latitude probably made quite a difference. And I think it was a bit of a surprise, I think, that there weren't more spoiled ballots. It maybe provides some alternatives here. It can, for one thing, foil the issue of the long ballot group that's the protest issue that's been dogging Mr. Poilievre from the very beginning here. And it does say that people are at least committed enough to do more than just put an X there, that they'll write it out.
Okay, so Sarah, with that said, at the end of the day for Elections Canada, an effective way of contending with all the contention over the impact of the longest ballot committee and its efforts to weigh down the process?
I believe Elections Canada is doing their darndest to make sure that Canadians can have confidence in our elections, in their integrity, and the way that they're performed, even in the face of things like the longest ballot committee trying to add 200 plus names to the ballot. Here's the thing, though. In addition to Canadians having confidence in our elections, I also think that it's really important that we highlight that this election, there were no questions around its integrity and of the winner. And so my words to anyone from a political party that's watching is that whether you like the result or not, if you're on the winning side or not, we need to continue to have confidence in our electoral systems and encourage others to do the same.
Kathy, last 20 seconds to you. Might the Battle River Crowfoot by-election signal the end of the road for the longest ballot committee?
Well, I think a lot of people hope that it does. It seemed to me that in their public statements that they were really starting to run out of steam in terms of having a viable argument there for this tactic. It was very muddy what the message was from the start. And I think that the fact that the Elections Canada came up with a workaround suggests that if they're serious about continuing, they're going to have to come up with some other tactic.
Indeed. All right, we have to leave it there. Great to see you both. Thank you kindly.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.